Hello, Greg Soulje. Welcome back. And looking forward to another weather forecast. It's been kind of a little active week this week, and we're not seeing a lot of relief, I don't think, going into today and into tomorrow here in the Midwest. And I guess down in the South, a lot of flooding.
Oh, yeah.
Some more things. And then, of course, it all moves off east for those folks to enjoy. So,
yeah, east and south. And actually just doesn't move for the foreseeable future. Then it finally does. But the damage is really already done in some of these eastern and southern Corn Belt locales. And while there's a break coming, again, you and I have talked about, especially in these eastern Corn Belt areas and points southward for the springtime season, it was going to be character building, a challenge, et cetera, so forth and so on. And while this is very much just early April we're speaking about, this is going to set the table for some issues going down the line on any additional rains that come. And we're trying to drain out a foot of rain in some areas over the next several days.
Yeah, makes things fun, that's for sure.
Well, character building. Character building.
There we go. Let me put your slides up and let you go. Take it away.
All right. Happy Friday on what has been, pretty active and busy spell of weather. And the headlines continue to be many eastern and southern Corn Belt areas. I'm looking at the flood warnings from the Maumee Valley of Northwest Ohio down to east central and southern Illinois. From there, the Missouri Boot Hill down into Arkansas and really into eastern Oklahoma. And there's such a dichotomy of soil moisture issues from now too much in eastern Oklahoma. They will get rain, but the drought continues on into the western reaches of the plains, Oklahoma and Kansas. But wave after wave of these rain showers and thunderstorms. And the damage was really laid out about 48 hours ago with some of those 1 to 3 inch rains and all that tornadic activity over western Ohio, Indianapolis, for example, south of Champaign, down into southern Missouri. So those folks are underwater already on a timetable and calendar here in this first week of April, when they ought to be out there doing something, including some of those southern Midwest winter wheat fields that are probably beginning to break dormancy that are now underwater. So lots of issues, and still not done with snow and cold into the upper Midwest. They're not going to get past 40 today in this range of temperatures, and kind of a stagnant weather pattern is going to just feed upon itself with these recurring rains, of which here they are during Friday afternoon. They're redeveloping into the Missouri Ozarks, so they'll spread northward to the I-70 corridor sections of Illinois and Indiana, and those shades of orange are once again these downpour producing, slow moving, what we call training effect thunderstorms, much like you see a rail car system carrying commodities or oil or grains or what have you. It's one after another after another. They just repeat over the same given area, these thunderstorms, and that's why you come up with these torrential rainfall amounts and then ultimately totals. And here we go into parts of northern and central Texas now, into the Arklatex area, the lower Mississippi Valley. That's been an area that's been hard hit. So that's the story this afternoon and evening time, and still not plotting and generating snow in some of the higher elevations as you get out west of Chadron, Nebraska, Goodland, and Garden City into the high plains areas of Colorado, New Mexico. Those folks will get some drought relief. That'll come in the form of some organized snows, probably into West Texas and the Oklahoma Panhandle as well. So heads up, livestock operators. It's in one direction or another. Either it's a sandstorm or windstorm, 70 mile an hour or more, or a snowstorm. You just can't get it figured out here on a balanced keel in that particular part of the southern plains. There is the flood warning related issues in shades of green from Ohio into Illinois, Indiana, all the way down into eastern sections of Oklahoma. Warnings there already, and flood warnings through the better part of Kentucky. Some of the streams and rivers in western and middle Tennessee are running between 5 and 8 feet above average already. There's the snow cover that we're adding to and will add to into the high plains as far south as New Mexico. Snow on the ground and a healthy amount of that into the Red River Valley of the north and north of the Corn Palace Sioux Empire region. And we're not really melting much of the snow as you get east of Lake Winnipeg. You should start that process at this time of the year, but we're not. And again, cold air masses like to migrate to these cold covered areas of the Great Lakes and or snow covered areas of the Canadian Prairie as we get into the springtime season. Of benefit, at least, we saw some modest drought improvement in some select areas of the plains on Thursday's issuance, and sections of the Corn Belt. We're going to eradicate it for all the wrong reasons here, but at least the snow and the rain is a benefit, obviously, to those pasture lands and range lands across the Plain States areas. There is the drought monitor from Thursday. Some modest improvement through northern Illinois, south of I-70. We had maybe a categorical adjustment to the positive side into the central parts of Illinois and Indiana. We're eradicating it, and probably have done so already in through Ohio. We'll probably continue to see marked improvement, but runoff issues and flooding through Missouri. And again, a couple of areas of improvement with time into the northern plains. But the southwestern reaches of the country and the Plain States areas are going to go right back into this drier weather pattern moving forward. We'll talk about that in just a minute or two. Anyway, southern states, dangerous, really the best way to call it, these dangerous recurring outbreaks of showers and thunderstorms over the same area. Then you got the runoff issues through Kentucky, the Ohio Valley, Wabash Valley, into parts of the Mid-South. And it just so it goes here over the next 2 or 3 days. Again, many streams and rivers into Tennessee, 4 feet, 6 feet, 8 feet above flood stage already. So that's going to be the story, roughly running from southern Ohio, south of I-70, close to about the I-64 corridor through Indiana and Ohio, back into middle Kentucky, the western parts of Tennessee and Arkansas. That looks to be the epicenter that probably, in addition to what you've seen already, and that's been generally speaking 3 to 6 inches, there'll be probably another 3 to 6 inches coming over the course of the weekend. And a little frost and freeze into the parts of the western states, not unusual for the early calendar, April calendar date across Utah and Colorado. There is the Friday night weather maps and charts. You kind of see a front that straddles the Virginias, and it runs down south of the Ohio and into a couple lows in those redder shaded areas through Oklahoma and eastern Texas. It's these little weak disturbances. We've had these big monstrous cyclones that have come through the Midwest, where we have these high wind issues, winter storm conditions. And this is kind of a different setup as each little disturbance tracks along this wide range of temperatures. That's how we generate these showers and thunderstorms. And the upper air pattern is kind of what we call running parallel to these fronts. So the fronts can't move north or south, hence and move into a drier air mass. And the Gulf moisture continues to pump up out of the Gulf of Mexico. And so the end result is you just get these overrunning rain events. And there's a new system you can see through New Mexico. That's the last piece of energy coming through. So we will begin to light up the radars into West Texas and New Mexico and western parts of Oklahoma with some moisture out there. And that moisture by tomorrow morning is snow. Delhart, west of Amarillo, out there towards Las Cruces and northward to a little bit south of about Denver. So some of those southern high plains livestock areas heads up for a shift from rain to snow, and a wet packing snow at that, as the showers and thunderstorms continue on to the eastern and southern Corn Belt. You see a little ebbing and easing some of these rains. They won't be continuous. They will be episodic, put it that way, periods, if you will, blotches, blobs, batches that come through the area. So you get some break, but then you get the next wave of low pressure to come on up, and you do it all over again over the same area with the Delta and Mid-South and Tennessee Valley back into severe weather tomorrow afternoon. More heavy rain up to about St. Louis, Springfield, Champaign, from there to about Fort Wayne and points out of the east. And you have severe weather, too, not the degree that we had over the central and eastern Corn Belt, but close enough with at least a moderate risk into the Ozarks and eastern Texas this afternoon. And then by tomorrow, a little more benign look, but still severe weather into the Delta and lower Mississippi Valley, and a couple of strong storms into the Ohio Valley. So we kind of lose the severe end, but we continue to generate the heavier rain end of things on already excessively, overtly washed out grounds in some of these southern Corn Belt areas back into the southeastern plains. And then by Sunday, there is the last, I think, of the heavy rains moving out of southern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, still ongoing in the Delta and east of there across the Mid-South and southeastern states. One good thing about this, there are indications of significant moisture again into the Mid-Atlantic region, the Carolinas, Georgia, and ultimately in through Florida. But on the backside of this system, Sarah, beginning to see some snow, and I wouldn't be surprised in our neck of the woods here on Monday. That stuff is flying around here all over again, and maybe even perhaps a coating on some colder surfaces. There's a perspective of moderate flooding over the next 5 days, southeast Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, key corn areas, and probably southern winter wheat areas of the Midwest. And there ought to be field work going on down there this time of the year, and there will not be for anything any short-term notice whatsoever, and even in the medium ranges, and then flood warnings and ongoing likely significant flooding into the Missouri Ozarks to the Boot Hill and parts of Arkansas. Part of that's rice country. A lot of it is soybean as well. Obviously some cattle too. And of course, all that will drain into the lower Mississippi Valley in the coming days. There's the big bullseye. The next 3 days, 72 hours worth. This is additional rainfall that we've seen already, 5 to 6 to 8 inches. Yeah, I-70 south to northeast of Dallas-Fort Worth, back across Little Rock, Memphis, Chattanooga, Evansville, Carbondale, just to name a few down there, and then upwards of an inch or two as far north as the Kankakee River. The quarter to three-quarter inch moisture is going to be snow across the Dakotas, parts of the western and northern Corn Belt areas too. So the headlines, obviously, the big rains across the Ohio Valley and points on southward. The storms will be of a severe nature for the next couple of days into the southeastern plains, far southern Corn Belt Delta before they shift off to the east of us, and cold weather hampering some outdoor work and cleanup and recovery and really the flooding efforts that will be going on in the days to come. Again, some snow into parts of the central Corn Belt as late as on this weather system is Monday, and probably some frost and freeze. Pretty good freeze potential, by the way, into the mid-20s, parts of central Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. The father-in-law's got a dogwood tree that's blooming in Pittsburgh, and that thing will probably take a hit because of some mid-20s out there at some point early next week. Monday, there's that U-shaped configuration across the middle part of the country. That's that slow-moving weather system. You can see one band of winds up near the Great Lakes areas, another corridor down towards the Gulf Coast. You marry those two together, you get a storm system, and finally some movement on this thing. And then the weather pattern, pretty quiet, uneventful. A system coming ashore late next week, Pacific Northwest. Much of the country will have drier weather. We've got about a 10-day to maybe 2-week window of at least not drier, not completely dry, but less moisture coming into some of these worst off drought areas. Worst flood areas, I should say, of the eastern Corn Belt and points on southward. And the drought areas will likely see some worsening as we start up for now in the short term and return to warmer, drier conditions. Again, high pressure, frost and freeze into the northwestern and then central Corn Belt locales Monday to Tuesday, into the eastern Corn Belt, lower lakes region Wednesday, and then increasing south wind and a couple of weak systems on the move. So drier, but not completely dry over Thursday and Friday next week. Temperatures will bump back, by the way, to more seasonal norms in the eastern Corn Belt. And kind of the right thinking here of the warm to hot ridge establishing itself and likely to stick around. It'll ebb and flow over the southwest, central and southern high plains. That starts the snow melt season in a hurry. Obviously, melt will get going on any snowfall that falls into New Mexico and western Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado. So we'll get some moisture and percolation there. Drier weather pattern expected across much of the country as moisture picks up in the Pacific Northwest and northern plains by about the mid-stretch of the month of April. Then the second half of the month of April and into May, by the way, we'll have that on this weekend's edition of This Week in Agribusiness. Not done with the rain. This is not a pattern shift where we're going to be able, once we get the water to drain or replant, that we're going to be scot-free. That's not going to be the story. So we'll have details on what goes forward here for the second half of April, first week of May from a planting and outdoor work standpoint on This Week in Agribusiness. So no change in our thinking around here. The D word will emerge out of the southwest into the plains as we see it right now and re-intensify over the western Corn Belt, eastern Corn Belt, Wisconsin to southeast Missouri and points out of the east will be a different story. We'll be chasing showers and thunderstorms the better part of this springtime season.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, right? Because we're going through all this moisture right now that we're going to be possibly in a drought here in a few months, would you say?
Well, I would think, there's been, we're in a drought already in some areas. We're going to probably eradicate it for the wrong reasons, just because of flooding in the eastern and southern Corn Belt. Not much significant improvement in the west, and again, nominal improvement in the plain states. And then we go back into building the hot ridge of the plains. We move it back into the western Corn Belt, worsen the drought there. They'll probably have better planting in Iowa and Nebraska and Missouri once the rains move out. north of I-70. And then the eastern sections will get into a little drier windows once I think we are able to get out with the heavy equipment, and probably 10 days, 2 weeks after those heavy rains move out, we start the rain pattern back up again in the north and really the eastern Corn Belt. Anything east of the Mississippi River, I think has to be watched for not the D word, but too much rainfall, and no sign of any extended dry time until we get into maybe the mid summer season. So there's going to be recurring replanting in the eastern Corn Belt, maybe a scrub as well for some folks, and that might even apply for areas south of I-70 in Missouri over the next few days. But east, no drought for now. West, reemerging and worsening in the plains and southwestern states. That's the way we see it. Might be counter to what other folks are hearing, but that's what we're thinking here in the old Soulje Weather Factory. We'll put it that way.
The Weather Factory. There you go. All right. Like Greg mentioned, you can catch him this weekend on This Week in Agribusiness. And of course, we'll be touching base with Greg next Tuesday and Friday. So we'll bring you some updates here on Feedstuffs 365 as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Greg.
Thank you. Stay safe and watch those waters, those high waters in the Corn Belt and Southern Plains too.
Thank you all for joining us too.